So, good morning everyone. I'm going to talk about server pools concept which was introduced in Oracle 11g release 2, where a server pool indicates a subset of the total available servers in a given rack configuration. So on the way through, now we'll discuss about server pools. What are the different server pools that are available, free and generic pool. Then we'll talk about what are the attributes of a given server pool. We'll do a small hands-on. We'll understand how different hosts are added to the server pool. We'll see what provision Oracle has made starting from 11g release 2 for database management. How was the older management? We'll also talk about the older management style which was very much available until 11g as the only style, 11g release 1 as the only style. But starting from 11g release 2, there has been one more style that has been added called as policy based management. So policy managed databases and admin managed database, will try to understand the difference, and then we'll try to convert our RACDB database from the default administrator managed configuration to policy based configuration. So to get started off, this is going to be a long discussion, uh, and I would preferably be taking those questions at the end. So let's first understand what is a server pool. Oracle RAC is designed to cater for Oracle specific applications and also for non-Oracle applications. Means it's not that you can use RAC only for Oracle databases. You could also make your third party applications highly available by utilizing the Oracle clusterware, the grid infrastructure architecture. A typical case would be to deploy an Apache web server to run on a given machine associated with a virtual IP. So if that machine is up and running, your Apache is up and running. But even if the machine fails, your Apache server, which is a web server, can be migrated to any one of the surviving machines which you might have defined in a given server pool. These applications, both Oracle and non-Oracle, when deployed on RAC, are termed as resources, and Oracle RAC can manage both kinds of resources on the clusterware stack, which is Oracle resources as well as non-Oracle resources. For example, of both Oracle and non-Oracle resources, we have seen how to manage database and the database instances. There is something also called as database services, which is a collection of instances defined as a service group, or you can define any other application for that matter, let's say the Apache web server. The traditional way to manage these resources was purely a manual orientation. So a DBA would manage those resources, will juggle them across the servers. The DBA was supposed to decide on which instance or instances these resources would run and would set them up accordingly. So it was very common earlier that in a larger cluster you will create something called as a service. A service uh, is a collection of instances. Now assume that I have a 8 node cluster, a typical 10G case, and on the same database I am running 3 applications. So one is my ERP application, another is my HRM application, another is a customer relationship management application. Now depending on the load profile where resources are required more, assuming the name of my database is Enterprise 1, ENT1 was the name of my database. With this database there are multiple schemas, and each set of schemas is being used by a particular application. Some schemas are being used by your ERP application, some of them are being used for your HRMS application, and some of them are being used for your CRM application. So it was very common in 10G to define services. So I have defined service named ERP, HRM and CRM. A service is a collection of instances. So I have defined that my ERP service would run on instances ENT1, ENT2 and ENT3. I defined that my service HRM would run on ENT instance 4 and 5. I defined my CRM service to run on this is my 8 node cluster. So I have consumed all 8 instances. For ERP application I said the connection coming for the service ERP should be routed only to instance 1, 2 and 3. If any connection comes for the service HRM, it should only be routed to 4 and 5. If any connection comes for CRM service, it should be routed to instance 5, 6, 7 and 8, which means a service can use dedicated instances. A service could use instances shared amongst them. For example, ENT1 5 instance, which is the instance 5 of my ENT1 database, is being shared by both HRM and CRM application. Remember, database is still one. This is to avoid any instance going to any of the available 8 nodes, to prevent that cross instance usage, which would also increase the inter-instance communication if a transaction splits. I am restricting the number of instances available for a given service to a specific count. For ERP I said that count is 3. For HRM I said that count of instances available for HRMS service is 2, and for CRM the count is 4. Now how I have decided? Asymmetrically, depending on the load requirement. It tells me that CRM is more critical application. CRM experiences huge load compared to HRM application, which is mostly busy during the payroll processing, only during the month end. And ERP is my general application which requires resources coming from 3 instances. So earlier all this management was done by DBA. So as part of this exercise, a DBA would define a service. As part of that service definition, he would define preferred instance or instances and available instance or instances. A preferred instance is where a connection is routed. An available instance, although it participates in a service, will not accept an incoming connection if preferred instances are available. If one of the preferred instances goes down, then the available instance will be available for catering the incoming user connections. So as part of a service definition in 10G, which was purely a manual management, a user would define, a DBA would define the available services. And a service is a collection of instances where an instance either plays a role, that of a preferred instance or that of an available instance. Now doing the juggling of these services was all a manual activity until 10G. Now to overcome these manual efforts of defining a service, defining which instances that service should be migrated to, or which instances are configured as preferred and available instances. Oracle in 11g introduced policy based management, and the policy based management concept works using server pools. Coming back to my discussion, the traditional way to manage these resources was manually. This is my manual approach. The DBA was supposed to decide on which instance or instances these resources would run, and the DBA would accordingly then create the definition setup the way I have created here. An example of this can be taken when you are configuring a service which has to be present on same nodes as preferred and another nodes called as available nodes. Although this kind of management works well, it's not something that can scale for a cluster which has got a large number of nodes in it. Think about doing this management all manually would be extremely troublesome. Consider now I have given you a 200 node cluster. Now in that case, obviously it's uh, configuring all these services and juggling them across instances would be too much of the work entrusted on the DBA. Now to avoid this, for larger clusters, Oracle introduced a concept of server pools, which is called as automatic management of services amongst server pools. Coming to server pools, grid computing is a concept within Oracle database which has been there starting with 10G. The basic meaning of grid computing is to divide the hard coupling of the availability of a resource over the machines, thus letting the resources be available wherever and whenever basis. So I don't care where my service is running. Here there was a hard coding. I hard coded saying my ERP service is only running on instances ENT1, ENT2 and ENT3. Here there is no hard coupling. So a service will be available on any of the available servers. Manual management of those services is no longer required, is what is the idea behind grid computing. This means that there shouldn't be a restriction on a said resource which must be present on a specific machine itself or can only be accessed from a specific machine. The very same concept is enhanced in 11G release 2 rack with the introduction of server pools. Here there was a hard coding, there was a limitation on which particular instance or which particular instance contributes to a service named ERP. This binding was defined by DBA. So to overcome those manual definition, to keep those services floating wherever the resource is available, Oracle introduced a concept of server pool starting from 11gR2. Server pool allow the same functionality of logically dividing the cluster into smaller segments that can be used for varying workloads. But unlike the traditional mechanism available until 11G release 1, which only allows this task by choosing the instances to run on nodes either as a preferred instance or available instance and running services using the same architecture, server pool offers a much larger list of attributes which help in management of resources in a rather simple and transparent way. So you don't have to do the manual juggling any longer. Depending on the policy that you have defined, a service will be automatically brought up on a given instance. In server pools, the underlying hosts of the cluster are added and can also be removed from the pools on the fly. So adding a server to a server pool is on the fly activity. So you don't have to take anything down. The service will not be unavailable when you are doing the juggling, which was the problem in 10G. This can be done on the fly and take the burden off the DBA shoulder for doing this activity. So now no longer a DBA is supposed to do this juggling. With just a few parameters to take care of, the whole stack becomes much easier to govern and administer while still being completely transparent yet powerful to manage all the types of different resources in the rack clusterware environment, especially when the number of nodes go beyond 2 digits. So if it's a smaller subcluster, it's still okay to do the manual juggling. But if it's a larger cluster, say 10 nodes or more, then and there are multiple services, I just configured ERP, CRM, HRM. What if there are multiple services, there are multiple nodes? Then it becomes extremely painful to do the manual management. That's where the concept of server pool, which is driven by a concept called as policy based management, comes handy. By default, you would see there are two pools called as free pool and generic pool. In 11g release 2, with the installation of the cluster, two pools get created by default, the free pool and the generic pool. So let's understand what is a generic pool. When you upgrade your existing version of clusterware to 11g release 2, all the nodes get mapped to the built-in generic pool. So if I am doing an upgrade from an older version of Oracle clusterware, let's say 10g or 11g release 1 to 11g release 2, then all the nodes will by default belong to generic pool. This is an internally managed server pool, and the modification of the attributes of this pool is not allowed. You cannot change any of the attributes of a generic pool. This pool will only come in existence when you upgrade from an older version of clusterware to 11g release 2 grid infrastructure. For that matter, although this pool is available, but you cannot even query this pool. You cannot even query. Forget about changing the attribute value of that given pool. As I said, this is internally managed server pool. That's why modification to the attributes of this pool is not allowed. Besides the addition of the nodes of the previous cluster in 11.2, when you create a database which is admin managed, that also becomes part of generic pool as child pool of it. I will explain once we go on to the hands-on. There is another pool called as a free pool. This is another pool which gets created by default with the installation of 11g release 2 clusterware. So where generic pool comes in picture for an upgrade, a free pool comes in a fresh implementation. If it's going to be a fresh installation of your clusterware environment, all the nodes will be attached to this pool in the beginning. So in my 3-node cluster, which is a freshly installed 11g release 2 cluster, all the nodes will be part of one pool, and that is a free pool. From this pool only, the nodes would move to manually created server pools. As of now, in our installation, there is no pool created. We do not have any pool defined. It's our fresh implementation. So all the nodes belong to free pool by default in a freshly implemented 11g release 2 cluster. But how long? Until you implement the server pool concept. As of now, in our 3-node cluster of alpha, beta and gamma, we do not have a server pool defined. So all the nodes alpha, beta and gamma respectively, all of them belongs to only one pool called as free pool. But if going forward, if I define a server pool on my own for my usage, assuming mine is a very large cluster of say 20 nodes, and tomorrow I decide to go with a manual server pool creation, then nodes will be allocated to the user defined pool from the free pool. So assume I implemented a 20 node cluster. There is no user defined server pool as of now. All 20 nodes will be part of free pool. Tomorrow I said I want to create a server pool called as ERP with 4 nodes. Then out of those 20 nodes, at random, any 4 nodes will be given to ERP server pool, which is a user defined server pool. Clear? So how many nodes are now left in the free pool? Only 16. As like the generic pool, this is also an internally managed pool, but still certain attributes can be modified. So it's also an Oracle defined server pool. So you cannot modify all the attributes, but certain attributes can still be modified. Example, an attribute named importance. Here I am on alpha and I am switching myself to the grid environment to check what all server pools are available. As of now, there is only one server pool called as free. By default, there is also a generic pool, but it's not being effectively used. It only comes in picture when you do an upgrade. The importance value of this pool is 0. The minimum value of the attribute of this server pool is 0. The maximum value is -1, which means unlimited. So how many nodes can be part of this free pool? Unlimited, which is what is indicated by -1. Candidate server names, server pool name generic, importance is 0, minimum is 0, maximum is unlimited. Candidate server for this pool is alpha, beta and gamma. Let's talk about attributes and then we'll try to understand in a broader sense how to create a server pool, how servers are allocated to a given server pool. Each server pool that a user defines has multiple attributes. Roughly there are 10 attributes, 9 attributes. The first one is access control list attribute of your server pool. A sample value which you can assign is owner, user, what permissions. Primary group, what group name, what permissions. Others, what permissions. So who is the owner in my case? Any user, whatever value you put in, that is Oracle. What permission it has? Read, write, execute on that particular server pool. What is the primary group of that particular user? Let's say oinstall. What the members of oinstall would have permission wise on this particular pool, read, write and execute. Anybody who is not Oracle, who is not a member of oinstall, what permission such people would have? They can only read the configuration of a server pool. Defines the owner of the server pool and which privileges are granted to various operating systems and user group is what is specified using the ACL attribute of the server pool. The server pool owner defines the operating system user, in our case Oracle, as the owner and which privileges that the user is granted. The value of this optional attribute is populated at the time a server pool is created based on the identity the process creating the server pool, unless explicitly overridden. So while creating the server pool, if I type the command as Oracle, by default the owner of that server pool will be Oracle. If the command to create the server pool was typed by root, by default the owner will be root, until you mention using the ACL attribute who is the owner. The value can be subsequently changed, like you do a change ownership. The value of the owner can be changed if such a change is allowed by the existing privileges of the server pool. Owner is the operating system user of the is the operating system user, who is the owner of this server pool, immediately followed by the privileges. Owner, Oracle, immediately followed by the privileges. PGRP, which is another value as part of the ACL attribute, identifies the primary group of the owner. In our case, Oracle belongs primarily to a group named oinstall, immediately followed by the permissions. The permissions could be read. The server pool configuration can only be read. Write, one can modify the attributes of the pool and can also delete the pool configuration. X, assign resources to this pool. One can then assign resources to a given pool. This comes handy only when you are doing SODs, separation of duties. If everything is being managed by Oracle, then this automatically becomes meaningless. By default, the identity of the client that creates the server pool becomes the owner. So whosoever creates the server pool becomes the owner of that server pool. Also by default, root and the user specified in the owner has full privileges. So anybody like root user would anyways have full privileges on it. You can grant required operating system users or operating system groups their privileges by adding user Tom followed by privileges for a Tom. Now this is categorically marking an exception and breaking beyond the shackle of three identities. Those three identities by default are user, group members and others. What if I have Tom, who is neither the owner nor the group member, but I don't want him to be treated as others? Then you can override for a categoric user saying Tom, although is not a owner, although is not a group member, but I don't want him to be treated as others. I want him to be treated as my friend who could also do my activities. So ACLs can be specified. On the similar way, on the similar lines, you can also mention more than one groups to be elevated from others category to a special privileged category. Next is active server. You can mention a space separated server names. Oracle Clusterware automatically manages this attribute, so you don't have to change this, which contains space delimited list of servers that are currently assigned to a given server pool. So as I said, your job is to only define a server pool with attributes. Typically there are only three attributes one would like to alter: minimum, maximum and importance. वैसे तो 9 एट्रीब्यूट्स है, but minimum you may want to only play with 3 attributes: minimum number of servers in a server pool, maximum number of servers in a server pool, and relative importance. I am going to discuss about all of those attributes going forward. Oracle automatically, depending on the importance, assigns the next available server in the free pool to your pool, depending on the importance. So automatically the name of active servers that are currently participating in the server pool will be managed by Oracle. Consider this case. I created server pool 1, minimum value of 1, maximum value of 2 and importance as 100. I created server pool 2, minimum value as 1, maximum value as 2, importance as 20. Assume none of the servers in my cluster configuration is up and running. What is the server free pool now? 0. Nothing is running. So how many servers will be given to SP1? No, as of now there is nobody running. I start the first server in my 20 node cluster. So how many servers are available in free pool? Only one. Depending on the relative importance of server pool 1 and server pool 2, to whom would be this server given to? The server will be given to SP1. So minimum values for that server pool to be considered eligible for service migration, it must have only one servers to be active. So the first server that comes alive will be given to server pool 1 depending on the relative importance. The moment second server joins in, to whom it would be given? It will be given to SP1 or to SP2. It will still be given to SP1 because the relative importance of that pool is more. The third server that joins in will be given to SP2. We'll understand this one more time once we go to the concept called as importance and understanding how servers are allocated to server pools. But the list of active server attribute is automatically managed by Oracle. So as and when a new server is given to a server pool, the active server list, the active server attributes value will keep on changing. Now who is assigning it? Oracle is automatically assigning. Next is exclusive pool. This is another attribute of a given server pool. You can give any text as the value. Anything that you can think of in this world can be assigned as a value for this attribute. Understand what that value means. This optional attribute indicates if servers assigned to this server pool are shared with any other server pools. It will decide if I have a server pool SP1 and I have a server pool SP2, can they share participating servers amongst the pool? A server pool can explicitly state that it is exclusive of any other server pool that has the same value for this attribute, which means if I create SP1, SP2 as two server pools, one server can participate both in SP1 as well as SP2. Clear? But to prevent that sharing, I can create server pool SP1 saying exclusive pool value is whatsoever. I said I can't share. I created another pool SP2 and I mentioned the same value for the attribute exclusive pool saying I can't share. Meaning if a server is allocated to SP1, the same server cannot be allocated to SP2. Clear? So any two server pool having the same value for exclusive pools cannot share servers amongst themselves. Default behavior is servers can be shared. Clear? If you do not want to share your server with any other server pool, then create those server pools and assign same value. Value क्या देते हो, that doesn't matter. You can give any value, but the value must be same. So if two server pool has the same exclusive pool value, then the servers cannot be shared amongst themselves. Two or more server pools are marked as mutually exclusive when the sets of server assigned to them do not have a single server in common. For example, if there is a server pool A and there must be a server pool B which must be exclusive, both A and B must be exclusive, then they must share the same value for exclusive pool. I selected I can't share. Clear? So indicating that those two pools cannot share a value. Now there is something very interesting. Top level server pools by definition are mutually exclusive. So I am talking about this concept only applies to child pools. Top level pools are anyways mutually exclusive. So consider a case. I created a pool named parent1 which has a sub pool named child1, child2. I created another pool called as parent pool 2. I have free pool with 20 servers. Clear? Now top level pools parent1, parent2 anyways are mutually exclusive. So if a server belongs to parent1, it cannot simultaneously be part of parent2. Then to whom does this concept applies to? This concept only applies to child pools. Now understand, I said minimum 2, maximum 3, importance 100. Minimum 1, maximum 1, importance 100. In the first case, consider this case. As of now, none of the cluster machines are up and running. So no pool will have any servers allocated to them. The first server in a 20 node cluster that I start will be allocated to, fill in the blank, parent1 or parent2. Parent1, because the relative importance of parent1 is higher than the relative importance of parent2. Okay. But now the problem is the parent pool has 2 child pools. Now to whom would that server be given to? Child 1, because relative importance of child 1 is more than the relative importance of child 2, 100 as to 80 is the comparison. So the current server that became member of parent 1 will be allocated to child 1. In the absence of this, the same server could be given to child 2. In the absence of this attribute, same server can be given to child 2. But here categorically I am marking an exception saying the attribute exclusive pools value is I can't share. The another child also has the same value. That means server 1 cannot be now allocated to child 2, although both of them are part of the same parent. Clear? Second server that comes in will be given to child 2. Clear? So understand the importance of exclusive pool. Exclusive pool for parent pools, top level pools, is meaningless because by definition each top level pool is mutually exclusive to other. So if a server is part of parent 1, it cannot be part of parent 2. Is this clear? Next is the importance attribute. Each server pool also has an attribute called as importance. It can have any arbitrary value between 0 to 1000. As I said, the value itself doesn't matter. It is only to correlate which server has a higher precedence claiming a server from a free pool for itself and which will have a lower precedence depending on the importance value. Relative importance of the server pool with 0 denoting the lowest level of importance and 1000 denoting the highest level of importance. This optional attribute is used to determine how to reconfigure the server pool when a new node joins a cluster or when an existing node quits a cluster. The default value is 0. Default value is 0. So it's for you, for the person defining the server pool. You can decide which service is more important to you, ERP, HRM or CRM. Max size can have any non-negative integer or -1. By default it is -1, which means unlimited, there is no limit. Indicates the maximum number of servers a server pool can have. This attribute is optional. When not set, then the value defaults to -1, which means any number of servers can be part of this server pool. A value of -1 for this attribute, meaning all the servers in the cluster. Next attribute is min size. It can also have any non-negative integer value. The minimum size of servers in a given server pool, if the number of servers contained in a server pool is below this number that you have specified, then Oracle Clusterware automatically moves servers from other pools into this pool until the value is met. Clear? So Oracle will start moving servers from free pool to this pool until the value matches the minimum size. Note, the value of this optional attribute does not set a hard limit. It governs the priority of server assignment. Whenever the cluster is reconfigured, the default value is 0. Name, nothing much to explain. What is the name you want to give to your server pool? I have given a name called as ERP pool. The name of the server pool, which you must specify while creating the server pool. Server pool names must be unique. Two server pool cannot have the name as ERP pool. And that name must be unique within the domain of names of user created entities such as any resource, any type, any server pool that you create. The name must be unique. So your server cannot have a name ERP pool and your pool cannot have again the name as ERP pool. So all the values managed by the Oracle Clusterware resources must be unique. This is the same rule applies for the server pool names as well. A server pool name can contain any platform supported characters except exclamation and tilde character. A server pool name cannot begin with a period, not with Ora something. Pool name cannot start with the name Ora ERP pool. It cannot start with .erp pool because resources names are by default in that format. So it cannot start with Ora, it cannot start with a dot. Otherwise Oracle will try to interpret it as Ora dot, which becomes confusing. Clear? So special characters, exclamation and tilde are not allowed. Anything other than is pretty much allowed for the name. Parent pools. This attribute only applies for child pools only. Use of this attribute makes it possible to create nested server pools. Server pools listed in this attribute are referred to as parent server pools. A server pool included in a parent pool is referred to as a child server pool. Clear? So you can mention who is the parent for this one, or whether the parent pool has child pools to be defined going forward. Server names, this is number 1, not required. But you think you have an affinity with a given server. then you can also define, while creating a server pool, which specific servers must be part of this pool. This is called as cherry picking. So by default, who assigns servers to server pools? Oracle automatically assigns any server that is part of free pool to a given user defined server pool. But you do not want Oracle to assign. You want, out of those 20 servers, 18 of them are old servers. Your company made a purchase of 2 servers, you have plugged it into the cluster. Now it's a 20 node cluster. Now you are a smart DBA. For your DBA task, you want to make use of those 2 new nodes. So you don't want Oracle to assign randomly any of the 2 servers from the set of 20 servers. You want to cherry pick which one should participate in your pool. Then you can do that by assigning the names of server to the server pool. Default, this is not required. Oracle anyways assign automatically. But no, you have a hard-coded dependency saying, no, I always want my service to run on these 2 servers. Probably those servers are of high calibration. So in that case, you might want to cherry pick that server. A list of candidate node names that may be associated with a server pool. If this optional attribute is empty, which by default is anyways empty, Oracle clusterware assumes that any server may be assigned to this pool. Clear? To the extent of the attribute values that you have given for your min, max and importance. So honoring those 3 attributes, Oracle will randomly assign any servers to your server pool. The server names identified as candidate node names are not validated to confirm that they are currently active cluster members. This is the disadvantage. If you cherry pick, Oracle never validates. Are they really part of your cluster, active cluster, or are down? And it will then hard code your server pool with those clusters to those nodes. Cluster administrators can use this attribute to define servers as candidates that have not yet been added to the cluster. So probably you want to make a provision for a future addition. So that way, not validating also allows you to add future member of your cluster as server names. Clear? So these are the attributes for a server pool. Let's find out. We already done that some time back. But it doesn't, it says only how many nodes are there in the cluster. In my cluster, I have alpha, beta and gamma. The earlier command only shows you server pool. Now I want a detailed description of the server pool. So my earlier command was srvctl config server pool. This time I said with -p, which means print me the attributes: name, importance, minimum, maximum, server names, parent pools, exclusive pools and ACL. These were the attributes that we discussed. -p prints the attributes as well. Which pool I am talking about? Which pool I am talking about? Which pool I am talking about? Which parent pool they belong to? Clear? Which pool I am talking about? Which parent pool it belongs to? For generic, which are the nodes? Alpha, beta and gamma. The aura.rackdb runs on which server pools? Which is a sub pool of generic pool. See here. When you upgrade your existing server, this is internally managed server pool. Modifications to the attribute of this pool are not allowed. Besides the addition of the nodes of the previous cluster. Now this is important. When you create a database which is admin managed, which was a 10G style, it also becomes part of a generic pool as a child pool. Now I don't know what type of a management I am using. I am revisiting because you might quickly miss out what I am reading. Very important. When you create a database which is admin managed, it becomes automatically part of generic pool as if it's a child of that generic pool. My database RackDB, my database TestDB, are they child of generic pools? Do I need to explicitly state that my RackDB and TestDB are admin managed? How do I see? So if you create a new database using DBCA, which is admin managed, automatically the database will become a child pool of generic pool. Is that clear? Where did I mention that? I don't remember I mentioning this. ऐसा मैंने कहीं दिया था? I don't remember. Let's see. I am launching DBCA. I said create a new database for me. Create a new database of general purpose type. Here it gives me. Do you want it as admin managed, 10G style, or 11G release 2 style, policy managed? The moment I say policy managed, it asks me what is the name of the pool to which you would like to assign this database. I am assuming I am still an old one, old DBA with still 11, not a, updated to 11gR2. I would have selected admin manage. Nowhere it asks you then which is the server pool. Automatically the server will become, this database will become as another child pool of your generic pool. Clear? So I said whatsoever is the new database. Clear? But the moment I select as policy managed, it will ask me, give me the name of the server pool. It will automatically create that server pool as well. As of now, use existing server pools for this database. No server pools found. As of now, there is no server pool defined. So it will now create a server pool SP1. Here I have defined the cardinality. How many nodes can be part of that server pool? I said 3. You can do any more, any less. I am going back to configure database options to see if it allows me to see how are my existing database. See the third column. How are my existing databases? Admin managed. Meaning cluster is 11G. My style of managing the database is like 10G. Anyways, it should be like 10G because server pool concept is introduced for larger clusters. When the number of nodes in your cluster is 10 or more, then manual juggling of services across the instances becomes very painful. For such cases, there is a server pool concept for automatic service management. That's why the server pool in the lab environment is not very appropriate. In a lab environment, you might at the max implement 6 node cluster, 8 node cluster. So manual management is still okay. So is in real life. If your cluster is a 8 node or below cluster, I would still prefer to do manual management, because server pool becomes difficult, adds more overhead in that case. But if there is a larger subcluster, say 20 node, then doing manual management is painful than doing automatic management. I repeat, when you create a database which is of the style admin managed means DBA managed, then the database will be allocated to servers which will be treated as a child pool to your generic pool. That's what I confirmed here. RACDB is an admin managed database. That's why RACDB was shown as a child of the parent pool called as generic pool. Clear? Now you understand why you are still seeing a generic pool. Lot of people were discussing, बोलते समय मैंने यहां बोला है कि जेनेरिक पुल कम्स ओनली इन पिक्चर व्हेन यू अपग्रेड, देन व्हाई यू आर स्टिल सीइंग अ जेनेरिक पुल देयर, although this was a fresh implementation. It is there because you created a database using admin managed style. Clear? That's why the generic pool is there. Otherwise, in a fresh implementation, you will only see a free pool, provided the database should have been created as a policy managed database. Clear? 11G way. So to show all the attributes of all the nodes that are part of your pools, you can say CRSCTL status server pool -p. It will show you the attributes of server pools. We did the same here. Sorry, I missed it. That's why I see it here. So free pool, generic pool, a pool of RACDB, a pool for TestDB, which are two databases on our cluster. You can check the status of the server pools collectively, but the default server pools, generic and free, won't be able to be completely described, and only a limited view of both of them would be available. I told you, both of them are internally Oracle managed. Generic pool cannot be queried. Generic pool attribute cannot be modified. Free pool can be queried and only importance attribute can be modified. The free pool can still be queried, but generic server pool would remain completely inaccessible, and you can check this. I am querying a specific server pool. Which server pool I am querying? Only free. If on the same lines, if I try to query generic pool, server pool generic is internally managed as part of administrator managed database configuration, and therefore cannot be queried directly using SRV pool object of your SRVCTL command. Server pool object of your SRVCTL command. Is that clear? But when I say in general, show me all the pools, it shows me that there is a pool indeed. Free pool, generic pool, RACDB, a pool which is a child pool of generic, and for the other database as well, which is a child pool for generic. You can create your own server pool by saying CRSCTL add server pool, name of the server pool, attributes, such as minimum, maximum importance. So I created server pool 1. I am creating server pool 2. I am querying them. Understand? So which pools are available? I am checking the server status as of now. Alpha is participating in which pool? Generic, RACDB and test. Remember, these were the admin managed databases. Beta is managed by is participating in which pool? Generic, RACDB and test. Gamma is participating in which? Generic and RACDB. Remember, testDB is not there on that server. TestDB is only a 2-node database. I am checking one more time. Clear? Now I have added 2 server pools. Looks like it has not reflected yet in my configuration. I am using it. I said CRS-CTL status server pool. I could see there is a server pool named SP1. I could see there is a server pool named SP2. As of now, servers are not allocated them. Wait. Sometime later, you will see the servers are allocated to the server pools. I don't see any, as of now, any server being allocated to the server pool SP1. But in the meanwhile, what I am going to do, I am going to launch DBC. Assuming that I am trying to create a new database using policy managed configuration. I want to create a database of the type general purpose transaction processing. I am saying policy managed. Now it's still not listing my server pools. That's what I said. It takes some time to reflect the configuration. I'm pausing.